My name is Hailey Mckeefry Delmas, and I am the Archdeacon of the Diocese of California. And I have been on the DioCal deputation 3 times, once as an alternate, then as a deputy, and now as an alternate. But I was just recently made a deputy, which I can talk more about.
We'll talk more about that in a minute, because that is sort of a bit of drama that we have going on here in this very unusual convention. But first, I want to talk to you a little bit also about one of your other important roles at convention, which is you are a journalist by trade, and you are lending that, and have in the past, you've lent that skill to not just our deputation, but to the entire church. Can you talk a little bit about what you will be doing?
Yes. So I've been doing journalism for 30 years. And when I went to my first convention, I really wanted to tell the stories because there are so many really good stories of things that happen both legislatively, but also on a really personal level. What people experience, what people are talking about, junkets and different, especially social justice stories, things like homelessness and immigration and gun violence have all been things that we've addressed at convention, not just on the floor, but as part of the happenings of convention. And so I started out doing a lot of writing on my personal blog, but then also on the diocesan site. And then some of those things were picked up by the wider church.
And now you have an official role, don't you, within the wider church for communications?
Oh, yes. So Gay Jennings, who is the president of the convention, the House of Deputies, started a brand new group called the Deputy News group. And so that's an appointment, and she has appointed, I think, more than a dozen of us who all have communications backgrounds in journalism and PR and communications of various kinds. And we are going to be covering the happenings of the convention, and we are writing stories, everything from taking a look in a strategic way about stuff that happened 3 years ago, 4 years ago, like the #MeToo legislation, and what we've done going forward, as well as doing daily reports to the floor and the wider church about everything that's going on. And this is a stellar group of individuals. They've been really, really fun to work with, and they know so much. They've already put out a whole bunch of stories that are really, really interesting.
Well, now we know that you went from being an alternate to now being an actual delegate. So tell us about how that happened and what that implies to your work now in General Convention.
So when I was elected to be on the deputation, I was elected as an alternate. And the way that it plays out is it's the order of when you're elected. And so both in the clergy and in the lay orders. And our deputation, we function in a highly active way, which is a little different from some of the other deputations that maybe elect an alternate, but they kind of keep that person at home. We take everybody to convention. This year we haven't been able to because of COVID, but so all the 2 or 3 years running up to convention, we're all working to follow legislation and report back to the deputation. We all have our different areas of expertise. For instance, I was following a number of the legislation around people with disabilities, and also training, formation, Christian formation. And so in the past, what's happened is that even though the alternates were not deputies, you can swap people in. So we were all given time on the floor. And it works really well, because what it means is that we have a wide diversity of people who know a lot of things. and they're able to be put in to speak to things that they know particularly well or can speak in a particular way. However, because of COVID, every delegation was asked to only bring their delegation and one alternate, and I was the second alternate. And then because of Brother Richard Edward Helmer had a big role at convention, he realized that he wasn't going to be able to do as much of the deputation work, so I became the first alternate. And then unfortunately one of our members got COVID, and so he can't go, and so now I am going to be a delegate, which means that I will be sitting on the floor and voting for things and listening to the arguments with even more attention than I would have before. But it was a big shift all of a sudden within 48 hours of going to the convention.
I can imagine we're going to hear more stories like that from other delegations as well.
In talking with some of my colleagues on the deputy news, there are a lot of people who, it's not just here in California and the Bay Area where COVID is spiking up, it's all over the country. And so, yeah, there's going to be a lot of shifts, last minute shifts. When I reached out and told them that because I was going to be following the House of Bishops, but now I can't because I'll be on the floor. He said that I was not the only person who had contacted him about a shift. There's a lot of it going on, and it's an interesting thing to all of a sudden be in the thick of things when you've resigned yourself or mentally prepared yourself to be on the edges. To be thrown right in the middle of it is both daunting and exciting.
I was wondering, because you're there to tell, or originally one of your main tasks was to tell the stories of convention. What was that one of the stories you were planning on telling, that was the COVID's impact on convention?
I've already contributed to a story that the Deputy News Service put out, and I interviewed Warren Wong, who is a stronghold person in our deputation, and we talked about the feelings, because there's a lot of mixed feelings about convention, because people see it both as a really important business meeting and a really wonderful time of the church gathering together to, talk to each other and see each other after a long hiatus. And because of COVID, a lot of that has been stripped away. There aren't going to be any meetings of external groups like the Union of Black Episcopalians or the Church Women. There aren't going to be the parties hosted. California normally has a California night in the middle of the convention. And so none of those things are happening, and they're encouraging people to stay in their pods and to not take meals together. And so it's going to be a much different experience. It's going to be a whole lot of business, and hopefully there will be some fun, but I think it will be less fun than we have normally had. The meetings run from 9 o'clock in the morning to potentially 9 o'clock in the evening, all 4 days. So depending on what legislative work needs to be done, they can be very, very long days.
I know that even though you were an alternate, you were still part of the meetings and the conversations. And so I know our deputation has a big role during convention and all the resolutions you guys have been part of working on for the past few years. So which one or which ones are you most looking forward to?
I always watch. So I asked the question at a recent meeting, how many pieces of legislation does our deputation have its hands in? And somebody went and counted them, and I think the number was over 250 that we have either authored or crafted or helped to craft. And that's an astonishing number of pieces of legislation. The ones that are near and dear to my heart are, I'm always interested in prayer book revision, because it's at the heart of our worshiping community, and there's always a lot of push and pull between the people who want to innovate and evolve, and the people who really believe and understand that how we've done things, that it's really important to honor that. And so there's always this tension, and so I always find that very interesting. Over and above that, I think the pieces of legislation that will point to the ways that our church are doing social justice work, prison reform, immigration reform, making statements about those things that will then be used by people who are on Capitol Hill. And I think that those are the ones that I find most interesting. And one of my fears actually is that because we're on such a tightened schedule, that things like very important work like ratifying the budget and electing people to positions that keep the convention going, that all those things will get done, and that some of these other things will get pushed to the back burner, because there's just not enough time. When you go from 10 days to 4 days, something has to give. So I'm hoping that we will get some time, and I'm confident that they're trying to make sure that these other really important issues do get some time to be discussed.
Our deputation, with your help and others' help, we're going to try to do our best to push out news that we think is going to be important to our diocese. But having said that, and as you just alluded to, it's just an overwhelming amount of legislation that we're looking at. Do you have any tips for how folks should approach this if you're trying to follow what's going on?
So on the Diocesan Convention website, they have a really good listing of all the legislation, and you can search by category or by what group is following it. So, there's a commission on liturgy and prayer book. And so if you look at what they're looking at, so it's a really good tool if you want to read what's going on. I also think that, there's so many dedicated journalists following this, that hopefully the stories that come out will be not just, who voted on what, and, what the actual end result was, but about some of the nuance of, the different sides of the issues, and the different ways that people are thinking about it. So hopefully, the deputy news and other journalists will be able to act as a sort of a body of synthesis to help people understand what's going on. So I would say, read the news feed for sure. As a journalist, I think that there's going to be a lot of good information coming out of the news feed.
I want to hear what inspired you to put your name up forward to be part of our delegation, and how would you inspire others who have never put their name forward to be part of the delegation, and the importance of what it is for us as Episcopalians to be part of General Convention?
Honestly, I never aspired to be part of the deputation. I was invited by someone, and I think that that's really important to say out loud, because I did not think of myself as a church business geek, and because in my role in diaconal ministry, a lot of what I do is really practical, like, how do we do ministry of housing people who are unhoused and helping people with mental illness and all these other things. And so I thought I wasn't the right person to be doing this kind of work of legislation, because I don't think of myself as having a legal mind. And the person who invited me, Warren Wong, a longtime deputy, was really intent on making sure that our deputation had a breadth of people, not just representation from all geographic parts of the diocese, and people of different age and different backgrounds and colors and all that, different orientations, but also he wanted to make sure that the social justice and human sides of things were really advocated for. And so he helped me to find my place in the deputation, in a deputation that is a whole bunch of people who can write beautiful legislation, and that is, covers all the bases, and then go and talk to people about it. All these people, I felt like I didn't have any skills compared to those people, but they really helped me find my place of communication and synthesis and asking questions, in the middle of discussions. That's kind of what I see my role. And so I would say, if you have any interest in it at all, talk to someone who's on the deputation. We're always trying to expand it and get new blood. There are dioceses around the country who have been sending the same people for decades, but that is not what DioCal is like. We are always bringing new people in.
As I brought up to Bishop Mark when I was talking to him yesterday, or a couple of days ago, it just seems like such a great training ground, even if you are well established in your career. I think from what I can see, you can only strengthen existing skills or add new skills that you didn't even know you needed by doing this kind of work.
And the other thing is, our deputation is really wonderful about helping people get their feet on the ground about how to do the work. So when I went to my first convention, I was assigned a mentor early in the process who I could call and say, when they say blue book, what does that mean? Or all the stupid questions, and so you don't have to worry about that there is a process in place to help people use the skills that they have. And certainly you get an entirely different understanding. Seeing the church work at the national level informs how I see it working even at the diocesan level and even the parish level, because they're all microcosms of each other. And so if you've been in a parish, whether you know it or not, you know something about how the church works.
Anything fun you're looking forward to? I don't know if you've ever been to Baltimore, and I don't know if you're going to have time to explore the city, but
I have not been to Baltimore for many, many years, and I actually don't eat crab cakes, so I don't know where that leaves me. But I do have a number of people in the church that I don't get to see very often, and I hope that I'll be able to at least be able to have an across the aisle conversation with them face to face after only being on the phone with them. My spiritual director is coming from the islands, and from Trinidad, Barbados, one of those, and I haven't seen her live in a long time, and so I'm looking forward just to seeing some friendly faces, I think.
Well, we wish you safe travels. I know you've got a long slog ahead of you.
Pray for the deputation, please. Pray for the deputation.
Yes, we will pray for all of you, and that you get home safely and manage to have some fun.
There will be some, just a little bit of fun in between all the meetings.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Hailey. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, take care.
Bye.